The Monkees, right here on the Vintage Rock and Pop Shop. The Monkees will be performing at the NJ Pack in Newark, New Jersey next Saturday night. And on the phone with us now, the guy who sang lead on that great Neil Diamond song and wrote some wonderful songs himself, but also I'm speaking with former WCBS-FM morning man.
Yes, sir.
Micky Dolenz. Yeah. How was that experience for you?
Unbelievable. It was wonderful. It was one of the toughest jobs I've ever had in my life. I mean, I'd done a little bit before guest things and stuff like that, and always loved the medium, always loved radio. In fact, when I was a little kid, like 12, 13 years old, I was into electronics, and I built one of those little FM radios from a Heath kit or something, and I set it up in my garage, I remember, and with a record player, and held a microphone up to the speaker of the record player, and I would transmit a show to my mom in the kitchen. Weather in the driveway today. No, I absolutely I loved it. But boy, I'll tell you, doing it for real, and especially the morning shift, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
It was one of the toughest things. Toughest jobs I ever have, and gave me a wonderful, even greater respect for what you guys do. The thing that I found the most interesting was that, being an actor and a singer, a musician, and all that, and stuff. When you're doing a show on stage or TV, you have at your disposal, of course, all of your senses. You can use the sense of sight and the sense of sound and the sense of playing and touch and all of it, but when you're doing radio, it's only one. It is just your voice. And it's like, whoa, you have to express, everything through that one medium, which is very difficult. And then, of course, there was the whole thing about getting up at,
Oh, yeah.
at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
But I had a great time. It was a real highlight of my career.
With so many hit Monkees songs and album cuts that hardcore Monkees fans probably want to hear in concert, and rarities that have seen the light of day over the years, how do you put together a set list for a Monkees show?
It's interesting you should say that, because it can be tricky. Davy Jones was great at doing set lists. He was a master at it. The general principle that we've used is that we all sort of en masse believe that you have this unspoken contract with an audience, and that the vast majority of the people that are there, they're there. They want to hear those big hits. Whether you do them at the beginning, in the middle, at the end, whatever, doesn't really matter a whole lot. But they want to hear those hits, and so. Because we had, quite a few, a good portion of the show is just doing the hits. And over the years, we also have sort of agreed that we're not going to do medleys. We're not going to say, well, here's a medley, a 30-second medley of our hits.
Right. Sometimes
we'll truncate a song, maybe if an album cut that's well-known, that but maybe was, 5-6 minutes long or something. We may truncate a little bit, but not medleys and stuff. So that alone takes up a good portion of the show, just doing those hits.
Yeah. And
then over the years, for the rest of the show, it's a little bit of a beggar's banquet. It's what do we want to do this year? What do we, hey, how about this song that it has been requested? And in this newest incarnation with Nesmith, it's been wonderful going back and revisiting some of his wonderful songs with him singing them.
Yeah.
That has been a great thrill for me, especially because I sang those high harmonies on some of his early Monkee stuff, and that's been wonderful. And album cuts, like we went back. Have you seen the show recently?
I haven't, but I'm going on the 24th.
Well, we went back, and this last sort of couple of tours has been a little bit of a chronological trip through time. We starting with the early Monkee stuff, and then going on to the stuff that we did on headquarters when we started getting a little more control over what we did.
Right.
Doing headquarters, and then doing and then every song we did from the movie Head all those beautiful Carole King and Peter Tork songs and Nesmith songs from that movie Head. And like I say, of course, the big hits.
You mentioned those high harmonies, and I love that sound of you and Mike harmonizing.
Yeah, that like Everly Brothers kind of thing.
Yeah. That was Micky Dolenz singing that high harmony part on the Mike Nesmith tune, You Just May Be the One, from 1967's Headquarters album. And Micky Dolenz is our guest today on the Vintage Rock and Pop Shop. And, Micky, you have one of the finest and most distinctive voices in all of pop music, and it's held up really well. I mean, I'm talking to you now, and you sound like you're 20 years old. But
I am. There's a portrait in my attic getting older.
But when you sing some of these high harmonies, I mean, do you ever think to yourself, why did I go for that big note 45 years ago? I'm still going to have to hit it.
Well, touch wood. I mean, I still have all the notes. I do all my songs, even in my solo show. I do all the songs in the original key. But I do have a very high range. I don't have much of a range, but it is up there. And I've taken care of my voice. When I started doing a lot of musical theater on Broadway and stuff, I started training a little more conscientiously, and because I had to.
Right.
Started doing some training and stuff, and you got to be careful. You have to warm up and stretch, and it's a muscle. Your vocal cords are muscles, and you have to take care of them.
I want to talk just for a moment about the song Randy Scouse Git. Mm-hmm. Now, if I were in England, I'd probably be thrown off the air, for
not
saying
now,
that.
But
not
you
now.
would have back then. You would have, yeah.
And as I understand it, and it's a famous story, but some people probably haven't heard it, that song was inspired by your trip to England and meeting the Beatles.
Yes. Amongst a lot of other things, too. I mean, but it was definitely my trip to the UK and the Beatles throwing us a party and meeting my first wife there and the whole hippie thing with birds on the sidewalk, meeting girls. And,
right.
Yeah, it was my little... what's that stream of consciousness sort of sort of song about the swinging 60s in London. Yeah,
it's a very unusual arrangement for that song as well.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. Who knows? I just was sitting there noodling on the guitar in the hotel room after a party, and it just came out. That's kind of the way I write. I've always been that sort of a writer. I've never been able to sit down, at 10 o'clock in the morning at a piano or with my guitar and say, okay, I'm going to write for a couple of hours. I've never been able to do that, and kind of wish I could, but it's just not me. And, something inspires me, whatever it may be, and I'll write a tune.
Obviously, the Beatles got the Monkees. They understood it. And,
mm-hmm.
Frank Zappa was a big fan. He was on the show,
Mm-hmm.
And when you're mingling with all these, musical peers, at any point, did the music aspect of the Monkees, in your mind, take precedence over the TV show, or was it always on the same level?
Well, it's really impossible to sort of, reduce it out like in any scientific sense. I can only speak for myself, of course, not for Mike or Peter or David. I was an actor, singer, musician.
Right.
But I'd had a TV series when I was a kid. I went to the first interview and read from a script, and so I always approached it, and I still do to this day as a. I was creating a role. I mean, I was creating a character, this wacky drummer in this rock and roll band on television. Because the Monkees essentially was a television show about a band that didn't really exist in in the kind of classic sense of a band. We didn't meet each other in junior high school, and
right.
It was a very different kettle of fish, much like really Glee, or Fame or something
right.
like that, or a Broadway musical, the Marx Brothers musical, which actually one of the Beatles, John Lennon, is the first one to say that. The Monkees are like the Marx Brothers. And he was absolutely right. That was much closer. The Monkees were much closer to the Marx Brothers than the Beatles. So to me, it was all part of the same project. I would film the television show for 8 to 10 hours a day, and then they would say, okay, you're going to go in the studio. 3 lead vocals.
Right. Well, you went from that crazy schedule, and then later on you're doing morning radio. You're a glutton for punishment. I have one last thing I want to ask you here before I let you go, and it's about something you're doing now that isn't music-related, and that's Dolenz and Daughters furniture, which I thought was pretty... It's not like a rock star vanity. Well, I guess you could build a vanity if somebody wanted you to build one, but you haven't lent your name.
It's one of the most wonderful things that I've been doing. In fact, I'm sitting here right now with my daughter, Georgia, who is the daughter of Dolenz and Daughters Fine Furniture. We're actually out in the shop today working on a number of orders that we got. It's just, I've always done that all my life. I've always had a workshop. It's nothing I've promoted or anything. It's been sort of my getaway, and I've always had a machine shop and a woodworking shop all my life. It just kind of gets me away from everything else, kind of get my feet back on the ground. And my daughter Georgia went to university in England and took a theater degree, and part of that is learning to use tools and build sets, and so she's very handy and very good at design and stuff like that. And we were building a coffee table for her boyfriend, actually, and I joked and said we should start a company, Dolenz and Daughters Fine Furniture, and she ran with it, started a website, did the Facebook page, the PayPal, the whole thing, and all of a sudden we had like 20, 30 orders for this stuff. And we were going crazy trying to make it all. And one day she had to put on the website, sorry, we can't take any more orders because Daddy's going on tour. And indeed, she just had to do that a couple of days ago. We had to put up a waiting list because I'm leaving on tour.
And I was looking at the website, and I'm looking at the picture, and I'm like, oh, the old man's doing all the work there on the front page.
No, she's that's a cute picture. She does a lot of the design. She does a lot of the finishing work. She does an awful lot of it. I'm kind of the slave. I do the heavy lifting and use the big heavy-duty power tools because I don't like her getting too close to them sometimes.
Hey, Micky, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
For chatting with us, and I want to remind everybody to go see the Monkees at the NJ Pack in Newark, New Jersey, May 24th, 8 p.m. That's a Saturday night. Micky will be there doing those high harmonies on those great Monkees songs and singing lead, of course. And, Micky, you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, sir.
Love that song. One of my favorites. I'll Be Back Upon My Feet. The Monkees right here in our Monkees Spectacular on WFDU FM. It's such a joy to speak with other people who are just as into the Monkees as I am. And I've spoken to some on the phone already today. And right now we're about to speak with Jodi Ritzen. Jodi and her pal Phyllis have put together a series of conventions centered around the Monkees. And they've proven to be very, very successful. In fact, the last one was in March, right here in New Jersey. And Mike Nesmith, Peter Tork, and Micky Dolenz all attended, as well as many, many other great guest stars and celebrities. Jodi Ritzen joins us on the phone today. And Jodi, when did you get into the Monkees?
You know what? I started watching the TV show when it was rerun back in 1986, when Nickelodeon had the Monkees on, and cable was something that not everybody had. And I used to have my family tape it for me, and I would watch it on my VHS tapes, and I just fell in love with the TV show. Then when the Greatest Hits came out, bought the tape, and just immediately loved the music.
And that was also the year of their big comeback tour.
Yes, I saw them in 1986. That was my first concert, actually. My first concert ever was September 26th, 1986, and it was at the Convention Center in Atlantic City. And my mom still insists to this day that I screamed so loud that I hurt her ears, even though it was me and like 8,000 other screaming girls. And I was fighting with somebody who told me that Mike Nesmith was not going to be at the concert.
Uh-oh.
And I insisted that they didn't know what they were talking about. Of course, I was 12 and didn't have any idea.
Right.
For some reason, it was a passion of mine, the Monkees. Everybody in school, I was always considered the monkey girl. And then this past June was the first time I ever got the opportunity to meet Mike Nesmith, and that was just coming full circle. You know, it was crazy.
Well, obviously, your passion for the Monkees culminated in the Monkees Conventions. Had you ever organized something of that magnitude before?
No, I actually, through Facebook, Phyllis, my partner, she had organized the Davy Jones Memorial. She had reached out to a friend of mine, Butch Patrick, who played Eddie Munster, because Butch was on the episode of the Christmas,
right,
the only Christmas episode. And she said, I'm having this memorial, and, I want you to please be a part of it. And I called Butch on the phone and I said, you're going to this. I don't care what you have to do, because he knew that I was the biggest Monkees fan. And then I reached out to Phyllis and said, listen, whatever I can do. And then it became a partnership from there. She lives in Brooklyn and I live in PA, and we talk on the phone 20 times a day, and the emails. And, we really had started a crazy business doing this. And then with the second convention, we were like, how are you going to do something that is going to keep people excited? And I said, I'm getting Nesmith there. And, everyone said, no, you're not. I said, no, I'm getting Nesmith there. I don't care what I have to do. And I was very fortunate. Everything just worked in my favor. And I knew for a month that before I was allowed to announce it, that he had said that he would. And when I tell you, I was a 12-year-old little girl running around my house, screaming at the top of my lungs. It was the most exciting, surreal thing. And he sometimes has like a bad rap, like people think that he's a certain way or too analytical or too serious. He was such a sweet man, so nice. They're a great bunch of guys, and they're very real guys. They know what the fans want. And the most exciting thing for me, truthfully, was hearing and getting the emails from people that we made their dreams come true. People never thought they'd have the opportunity to meet him, and they credit Phyllis and I with having that opportunity. And to me, it's not about money, not about fame, not about popularity. Just knowing that we were able to make a difference in their lives was the coolest thing ever.
Now, of course, people are going to be wondering, will there be another Monkees Convention next year?
See, you're trying to get me in trouble. What I can say right now is we are in the process of working on doing that. We would like to go out to the West Coast, and with the guys on tour right now, we really want to do it with all of them on board. But that's what Phyllis and I want to do. We would like to, because now there's such a family that has grown
Sure.
through the fans, which I guess is similar to that of Beatlefest. I mean, Beatlefest has never had a Beatle there. And when you ask people why they're going almost like camp, to
Right.
see their friends. And we've just met some incredible people from all over the world. So our goal is to have another one. We definitely want to have another one for the 50th anniversary. But we want to give everybody the opportunity. Nez came on late, and Peter came on like a week before.
Right.
And to those around the world, that really didn't give them enough time to be able to plan financially or, vacation-wise, to come out. So our goal is to make this happen again, of course.
So while plans for another Monkees Convention are tentative right now, there's definitely going to be another convention based around another TV show coming up.
I'll tell you something. What happened with the Davy Jones Memorial was pretty incredible. We reached out to people who had worked with Davy. That's why we also had the opportunity to have some of the Brady Bunch kids there. And they were so happy with the way that Phyllis and I actually conducted ourselves and the fans. They had come up to us and they go, you got to do a Brady Bunch convention. So what came out of the Monkees was a whole nother, now we're hitting the 70s, and we are doing the Brady Bunch convention at the same place that we did the Monkees Convention at the Hilton Meadowlands in East Rutherford, New Jersey, and that's August 16th and 17th. And what we're noticing a lot is that, people are just tired of hearing about pop culture these days, the
Sure.
Kardashians and Beyonce and all this nonsense. They really, we want to go back to an innocent time. So we reached out to the main TV people from the Brady Bunch, the cast members. This is 40 years, when we did our research, 40 years that the Brady Bunch went off the air. Mm-hmm. But never actually went off the air. It's just been rerun for 40 years. And then it's 20 years since the movie. So we said, well, what are we going to do? So what we've actually done, we are going to have cast members from the TV show. We are having people from the movie come out. We're having Sherwood Schwartz's kids, Lloyd and Hope Schwartz, are coming out. Karen Reed, who is the only daughter of Robert Reed, is going to be there. And not only are we doing the meet and greets and the panel discussions and all that fun stuff for the Brady enthusiasts and historians, but we just signed on Disco Unlimited, and we're going to have the biggest 70s dance party, and we're going to do a throwback to the 70s in August, and we're going to just, everything from bell bottoms to Tang, I guess. We're going to try and relive that, for a small period of time.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of fun. Now, for listeners who want to keep up with the progress of either the Monkees Convention or the Brady Bunch Convention, where would they go online to get all that information?
We have the Monkees Convention. Well, it's actually www.monkeesconvention2014.com. We also have our website, our Facebook page that has Monkees Convention, where we do all kinds of cool stuff, interacting with everybody, asking questions, sharing pictures, sharing stories. And then the Brady Bunch one is BradyBunchConvention.com, and that also is on Facebook as well. We have been getting all over the world, media from all over the world with the Brady Bunch one. It's been pretty crazy. We actually have a television producer that's coming out, and they're going to be filming at this event because what Phyllis and I like to do is we want to make this the most memorable time for anybody. I always tell people, you can get somebody a gift, and the next year they're not going to remember what they got, but
Right.
You will never forget, meeting these celebrities or the friendships that come out of all of this. It's priceless. Barry Williams is doing a special show for us on August 16th that evening. All the songs from the Brady Bunch television show he's going to be doing. So it's a family event, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, it certainly sounds like it, Jodi, and I want to thank you so much for coming on our Monkees Spectacular.
I am so excited that you guys are doing this, and keeping this kind of music going is really so important for all of us, and we appreciate the fact that you're celebrating the Monkees the same way that we do, because their songs are amazing and timeless.
You can tell the future's looking bright.
It seems like fans of the Monkees always seem to channel that energy in a creative direction. And our next guest has been doing that for a number of years in the world of podcasting, and he's soon going to combine his love of the Monkees with podcasting. Rock historian Ken Mills joins us. And Ken, tell me about how you first got into the Monkees.
I guess I'm one of the original Monkee kids. Back in the days, I was a tiny little thing, about 3 or 4 years old, actually. And my uncle and my aunts were big into the Monkees at the time, and including my mother as well. And I remember probably somewhere around 1968 or so seeing my first actual Monkee album. Prior to that, it was just a TV show.
Right.
And I remember seeing an album, and keep in mind, I couldn't read at this point, but I would try to figure out what was going on the back of the album cover and stuff like that. And I had been really big into the Beatles even as a little child. I would, where most kids would say, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? I would stand beside the record player, and I would flip over, Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane. I'd flip that over and over and just play that, Day Tripper and so on and so forth. And the Monkees fit very well alongside the Beatles for this little kid. And then as I got older, the Monkees went into syndication. And that was a great thing to have, because it was, it just seemed like you didn't have to wait once a week or twice a week to see them.
Right.
It was on every day if you wanted it. And I remember that they also aired on CBS on Saturday mornings, a part of their Saturday morning lineup. And you'd have things like, you'd watch the Monkees, then you'd watch American Bandstand, and then you'd watch Soul Train into the 70s. So it was a
right.
neat little music block, if you will. Talk about diversity. You never know what you'd get all the way around. So that was really cool. And then I remember going to the library, which, before we had the internet, kids, we used to have to go to this building called a library to get information. And I remember finding a rock encyclopedia, and I'm reading about the Monkees, and it was kind of bizarre to find out that they continued on past Head. It always seemed like everything you could read, it seemed like once the movie Head happened, the Monkees disbanded, but that's not entirely true. They continued on as a trio.
Right.
And then they went on as a duo with just Micky Dolenz and Davy Jones. And they did one album of that. And then there was a thing where they did with Dolenz and Jones also did a thing with Boyce and Hart where they did the songs of the Monkees. There was even a TV special about it. And even though things had waned in America, the boys still found life like in Japan and outside of the realm of things. And Mike, he did his country rock stuff, and the boys all did stuff along the way, occasionally getting back together. But it wasn't until the 80s when Monkey Mania started up again through the show being showed on MTV. And not only did that kick off their, a new album with new songs on it, but there was also a Monkey tour. The Monkees are on TV all the time, sometimes 24 hours a day on MTV and then later on Nickelodeon. Yeah. and those were a great time. I remember my buddy and I actually buying 2 VCRs just so we could record all the Monkey episodes. So that's the kind of crazy insanity. We took turns tag teaming, recording them all off of MTV when they first aired on there. Because that was a big thing, to be able to rewind and watch these things over and over again. It was great. And it was great to see the guys as a trio again without Mike going on tour. That was kind of fun. But I think the greatest thing that has happened to us as Monkee fans has been the fact that Rhino got a hold of them, Rhino Records.
Yeah.
Because they have put everything out by them. And it's been a fantastic collection of stuff that they've done. And trust me, if Davy Jones brushed his teeth and it was recorded on a Tuesday in October, it's on a Rhino release. They are that vast and expansive. And I wish that as a Beatle fan or a Kiss fan or a Cheap Trick fan or whatever band you're into, just pray that Rhino gets a hold of them, because everything will come out. And it's just fantastic. It's actually a good time to be a Monkee fan.
Yeah, we have to thank Bill Englot and Andrew Sandoval for their hard work in tracking down these unreleased tracks. And and I had said this to you off the air. It's one of the reasons that I became such a diehard Monkees fan was learning that so much was left in the can. And, you know, a lot of it just as good as what was released.
I agree 100%. And, you know, it's weird when we think about music today from, like if you look at a band that's up and coming today or an artist that's coming up today, they may put an album out every 2 years. The Monkees did 2 seasons of a television show and roughly 6 albums in about a 3-year span.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And some people might say, well, that's no big deal. The Beatles did that too. But the Monkees did a weekly television series on top of all these albums and touring. And they, of course, had Jimi Hendrix open up for them. We all know that famous story. But one cannot discount what the Monkees bring to the table. And it's an amazing story when you think about it. Like, a lot of people say that the Monkees deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I can't see why they wouldn't be in there. When you think about what they did and the rebellion that they did against their own record company and their basic corporate owners, they went in and they overtook the machinery and they became a band that started in a TV show. And some people may not give them the credit for that. But when you think that some of their best stuff came out after they became a band and started writing their own material, and Mike Nesmith always wrote his own material.
Yeah.
But he was probably the fulcrum of the thing that got them to become an actual band. He got into a fight with Don Kirshner, and there's that famous story where he punched the wall and he said, "That could have been your face," you know.
Right.
But out of that spawned them getting a chance to go into the studio and fail or succeed on their own. And when you look at the songs that they did when they became their own band, in a sense, they did Daydream Believer. That's not a slouch of a song.
Oh, yeah.
And then Valley Sunday and, you know, Shades of Grey. Those are not throwaway songs. Those are not disposable pop tracks. Those are some of the stuff that was basically pop music in the 60s. And you can't overlook that. You know, I sometimes wonder if we would even remember the Monkees had it not been for Mike Nesmith and Peter Tork saying, we need to start recording our own stuff. Because it could have just been a TV show that lasted for 2 years, had a few hits, and that could have been it. It could have been a nice memory and then an oldies revival kind of thing. But once that happened, it made it so that they became in charge of their own destiny in a sense. And it became a bigger thing.
You know, the odd thing is, and I'll just bring this up because there's always the disrespect that the Monkees get, usually from rock critics. Uh-huh. And people, generations really, have been spoon-fed, you know, this nonsense about them via Rolling Stone magazine would be like the number one culprit, and the sort of hip magazines at the time. Yet the interesting thing is their peers appreciated them. You know,
absolutely. John
right.
Lennon said that they were basically the Marx Brothers for their time, and he even, you know, enjoyed them so much that the Beatles threw a party for them when they came to England. When the Monkees went over to England, the Beatles threw a huge party for them. Micky Dolenz was able to go and sit in with the Beatles while they were performing Good Morning, Good Morning for the Sgt. Pepper's album when they were recording that. Not everybody got those kind of invitations.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the Beatles allowed, for the first time, their music to be used in an episode of The Monkees, which Micky Dolenz directed the Frodis caper, and they actually licensed the usage of the song Good Morning, Good Morning off Sgt. Pepper's, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, which that was unheard of at the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that shows you how much that they respected the Monkees, that the Beatles respected the Monkees. And whether you look at the Monkees as musicians and singers or as comedians, because it's two very cool different things. I mean, all of the Monkees had great comedic timing. They all had charms that they brought to the screen and worked those long, grueling hours. But then you have the voices. You will really not find a much better voice in pop music than Micky Dolenz.
That's true.
You just won't. Davy Jones, Daydream Believer. What a great... I mean, that is pure pop perfection. It's just amazing that Mike Nesmith, who wrote a song before he was in the Monkees, which wound up being recorded by Linda Ronstadt and the Stone Pony, the song Different Drum. So these guys just wore pretty faces. There was a lot more to them. So whether you look at them as musicians or singers or comedians, they were able to do this, and in such a short span. And they've been able to keep this going and make it last. And they're on tour this summer. So sadly, Dave Jones is not with them. But, life goes on, and the people that are able to see the Monkees this year are going to be entertained.
I wouldn't be able to let you go without asking what Gene Simmons would have to say about the Monkees.
Gene Simmons would say that the Monkees are 4 powerful and attractive men. That's exactly what Gene Simmons might say.
For the audience, Ken Mills is affectionately known as the Podfather. He is the grand is the grand poobah of KISS podcast. The Podkissed is the name of his podcast, which I've been listening to in secret for years. People don't realize that I've been listening to the show. I've listened to it probably since day one. And now it's the Cheap Talk, the Cheap Trick podcast.
Yep, and we did a Beatles special.
Yep.
And as you know, we are doing a series of Monkees podcasts, so this is going to be exciting.
All right, Ken, thanks so much.
All right, my friend. I appreciate it, and thank you so much.
Hey, hey, mercy, woman.